Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Today, we have a special guest who's going to be on with us shortly, and I'm so excited to have this guest. If you're watching me on IG Live, we appreciate you being here. If you're catching the replay, I appreciate you watching the replay. But we're going to have such an interesting conversation this evening because I have a special guest who's going to help us on our journey to recovery. When we are involved in abusive relationship, there are certain personalities that we may deal with. And one of those personalities are those who have a narcissistic personality. And I think that's a very important thing for survivors to understand. It doesn't matter if you've dealt with intimate partner abuse or just other relationships that have caused you to interact with these personalities. So I want to welcome Miss Bucci to our live. Thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Hey, Rhonda, thank you so much for having for. Oh my gosh, speaking. Take it.
It's okay. It is Monday. I know we probably had a hectic Monday. That's why I so appreciate you being with me this evening. And thank you for anyone else who's joining or watching us on any other platforms. I appreciate your presence here. So let's jump right into it. Can you tell me what exactly prompted you to become a narcissist abuse coach?
So I'll try to keep it as short as possible because it is a long, convoluted story. But basically, like I never thought I would ever be doing this. To be totally honest, this is like completely out of the realm of like any possibility, like over 5 years ago.
Mhm.
And pretty much I had really severe chronic pain from 2015 to 19. And it started off with like a wisdom tooth extraction, then it turned into TMJ dysfunction. I got carpal tunnel, neck pain, my neck, like I had an x-ray done, I had kyphosis, disc degeneration, like all this crazy shit was going on. And at the ripe old age of 30, I got shingles in my mouth. Yeah, which is like seniors are supposed to be worried about shingles, not like someone who just turned 30, but hey, lucky me. And I ended up with something called trigeminal neuralgia, which is nicknamed the suicide disease because that's how painful it is. I literally told my husband over 5 years ago that like I'm going to try my best to, give you another 10 years before you're going to have to call yourself a widower, because if 30 is this bad, I'm like terrified of what the future and aging has in store for me. And then I stumbled upon something called the mind-body connection, which is the work of the late Dr. John Sarno, which is the theory that anybody who has physical chronic pain that persists for longer than 6 months, it's actually not about the original injury anymore or any structural abnormalities, because that's actually completely normal. It doesn't have to be painful. It's actually because of repressed emotions from childhood trauma. And so I was offended when I first heard about this. I was like, I don't have childhood trauma. I knew I was raised by a narcissistic mother. Like, I knew that, but I didn't see that as trauma. Like, when you hear the word trauma, you think of like a car accident or like, growing up in a war zone, physical abuse, sexual abuse, stuff like that. I didn't think like emotional abuse or narcissistic abuse was like trauma. But regardless, I had the gift of desperation to get out of pain.
Yeah.
So I did the inner work, and within 4 months, I was actually completely pain-free, which was crazy to me. And so that is what prompted me to become a coach. So I actually started off as a pain coach. And then the more I started opening up about my story and being raised by a narcissistic mother and, dating narcissistic men and experiences with narcissistic friends and all that,
Right.
Here we kind of are today. And I use the mind-body connection practices in the work with my clients. So, because everyone has chronic pain anyway, so we kind of kill two birds with one stone. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's amazing because I saw the pictures you post of the x-rays of your jaw. And when I just looking at the picture of the x-ray, I was like, wow, she had to been in excruciating pain. But 4 months, it's so quick. And that's an amazing recovery time because so many people take years and years and years and they go through such long drawn out processes before they really start to heal and recover or even pinpoint that is not all physical. Some people will say it's a spiritual thing, but like you said, it's that trauma that the body carries that's now showing up in your physical ailments, and people don't realize that. I'm a two-time survivor of domestic violence, and I know that what I went through caused me to self-sabotage. I had a lack of confidence, and for many, many years, I just couldn't figure out why I felt stuck. It seemed like I'm out of the abusive relationship. Life should be great by now, but it wasn't, because I was no longer with him, but that relationship was still held within me. So I had to do so much to change my mindset. Was the pivotal point for you the pain you were going through that made you say, okay, this is the thing that has to change, and I'm going to now move from this, since I've overcome this, to really understanding the root cause?
Yeah, like I honestly like so I had been in therapy for several years before the chronic pain even happened. So it was like 4 years of chronic pain. Started in 2015. I guess I started therapy in like 2012 or something like that. And then I just, based on the therapy that I had, which was not great therapy apparently, I kind of had this belief that like, okay, like I was raised by a narcissistic mother, nobody gets it, and I'm just scarred for life, and that's kind of it. And so yeah, like the pain really was that catalyst for me to actually make the change I had no idea needed to be made.
And I hear that so often, because I also went to counseling. It didn't work because the counselor was not someone who understood abuse. And I think that's a key thing. A lot of people now do peer mentoring because you want to walk that journey of recovery with someone who's actually been there. And I think that's key. If there's anyone who is listening in who doesn't quite understand what narcissism is, can you tell them what it is and how to identify that in their personal relationships?
Totally. So, you can check Google and see all like the common stuff where it says that, narcissists are arrogant, they're always right, they play the victim, all that kind of stuff, which is totally all parts of being a narcissist. But the best way to really identify if you are dealing with a narcissist, because it's confusing. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, red flag number one, I guess, would be if you are confused in general, because healthy relationships, like, there is no confusion. If there's something you disagree on, there's going to be a civilized conversation that's going to take place and an actual resolution. Whereas with a narcissist, they are interested in creating and nurturing chaos. So you're going to really notice a cycle of love bomb, devalue, discard. And so love bombing, and like not just in the relationship cycle, but like there's micro cycles too that I teach my clients about as well. And they can happen within literally one conversation with a narcissist. And so obviously in a romantic relationship, if they love bomb you, right, it's going to like grand gestures, praising you, we're soulmates. I've never met anyone as beautiful as you, all that kind of stuff. And like, it feels nice to hear that kind of stuff, but like red flags. Absolutely red flags. Right. And then there's the devaluation where, it can start out very subtly at first, where, little chips at your confidence, your character, your appearance, things like that. And then there's the discard where, you're dead to them basically, and they just completely drop you, and it's like you never existed, and like nothing makes any sense. But throughout the relationship, there's those micro cycles. So love bombing doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It could be anything you want to hear. It could literally be the narcissist finally making sense for once in their lives, and you actually agree on something, right? Like that would be love bombing. It's whatever they need to do and say in order to gain your trust. And then as soon as they've gained your trust, then they start devaluing you. So, they start telling you off for loading the dishwasher wrong, or whatever it is. Like it can be like the most random stuff that they devalue you for, and they will induce feelings of guilt, shame, and fear within you. So if you're ever feeling guilt, shame, and fear, I tell my clients all the time, those are the three musketeers, right? Like those emotions make something easier to control. If you ever feel confused, sense of obligation, general bamboozlement, you are probably in an easier to control state, because the first thing you want to do when you're in those emotional states is like not feel that anymore. So chances are you're going to act on that emotion and make a decision that is going to benefit the narcissist rather than yourself. And yeah, and then the discard, it can also be really subtle, just like the love bombing, where they ignore you for 5 minutes, or they give you the silent treatment for a few days, or you go to bed angry and then they wake up the next morning and like everything is like as if nothing ever happened. So then that goes back to love bombing. So you're, if you're really like paying attention to your relationship dynamic, you're totally going to notice that love bomb, devalue, discard cycle going on over and over and over again.
Yes, there's always cycles. And we had someone in a comment who said, knowing how much darkness I had to keep silence about my whole life when talking about the horrible experience of being in a relationship with someone who's narcissistic. And when I say a relationship, I'm not limiting that to intimate partners. That can be family members, that can be friends, that can be coworkers. So we don't want to say we're limiting ourselves to defining that it only happens in romantic relationships. And I believe you've mentioned in your lives and your posts that you actually experienced it with a family member.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, totally. My mother, like, she was such a narcissist. She passed away like 4 years ago now. Woo, ding dong, the witch is dead. It's terrible to say, but hey, on this discussion, it's all good.
Yeah, it brought freedom to you, though.
Sorry?
It brought some freedom to you.
Oh, absolutely. Like, it definitely made me a little less reserved about talking about like my actual experience growing up with a narcissistic mother. Because before I was like terrified. Like, this woman didn't know how to like use a computer to save her life, but I was just like terrified she was gonna find me somehow. So definitely gave me a little more freedom for that. But yeah, it was pretty bad. Like, I basically I'm a pawn baby, so basically, like, the only reason I exist is because my mother wanted revenge against my father. That's why I'm here. Hello, everyone. And kind of backfired on her, and she pretty much like alienated me against him. So she told me all of these lies about how he was such a horrible person. He left us penniless. He didn't actually want me. He abandoned me. All that kind of stuff. And like, he never paid for child support, and like more lies. And then I found out actually in 2016 that was all complete BS. He actually did leave child support, and she actually stole all that money. Yeah. Yeah, so it was a time, and there was a lot of like financial abuse as well with my narcissistic mother. She, like, we had a joint bank account, so I never actually had control over my finances for the longest time. And it wasn't until I was like in my final year of university when I was like bartending and making really decent tips, and I would, at the end of every month, I would kind of like give her all the cash tips that I had made to deposit in the bank account, and then she'd yell at me for spending it. And so one time I was like, wait a minute. I started Googling. It was like the primitive days of Google. And I realized like, oh, I'm over the age of 18. I can actually legally just like walk into a bank with my ID and documents and like open my own bank account that she has absolutely zero access to. So that's what I ended up doing. Then she started charging me for rent when she found out about that. So it was like impossible for me to save up and move out. And I ended up just like taking on some debt just to move out of her house eventually when I was like 26, because I just couldn't take it anymore. And like it was a terrible experience for sure. And it's, knowing what I know now about the mind body connection, like it makes complete sense why I had such severe like life and death chronic pain.
Yes. We have someone in the comments who said that she or he was just a child reacting to his or her environment. And that is so true, because as children, who do we want to please? We want to please our parents. We see them as, being all good, even if they are not, because that's the experience that we are having. So, yes. So I'm so glad that you were able to overcome that and do the work that was needed to get you to this place where you are now in life. So tell me, as you coach individuals in your program, what is sometimes we progress but not know we've really gotten far. So at what point do you begin to see where people, like, the light bulb comes on, and not only they understand what they went through, but they begin to transform and transition?
Yeah, so I mean, everyone's different. It just really depends on their own process. So I mean, the content in the program is universal, but it's up to that person to like do the work and stuff like that. I have some clients where they start actually making shifts before we even get started. Like, so it's really, it can go either way. A lot of people, like within the first couple of weeks, to be honest, like there's major shifts happening. They're really starting to understand, like, okay, this was not my fault. I don't have to blame myself for everything. And just because I've made mistakes in my life, which every human on this planet has, it doesn't mean I actually deserved this abuse, And then, just the magic starts to happen.
Yes, and that's key thing to remember. Things happen in life. We are living a human experience. We have to deal with other people on top of managing our own emotions and figuring out who we are. And sometimes we just have to give ourselves credit for what we have done and the work that we have done and the progress that we make regardless. So, what is the name of that coaching program?
Yeah, so it's the Bulletproof Group Coaching Program. This round is actually full as of Friday, but I do have a wait list. So if anybody is interested, if enough people get on the wait list, maybe I will sneak around in earlier rather than later. And if anyone is interested, you can just head over to the link in my bio to fill out the application form for that wait list. There is another program as well called the Freedom Program that you can join anytime. Not as much support for me as Bulletproof, but it's a great option as well. And you can check it out at the link in my bio too. And you can get an $800 discount on that.
Yeah, we definitely want people to be bulletproof from, having all those darts at them that, they're going to face an experience in life at some point, whether it's from someone who's a narcissistic or just people who are not happy within themselves and they take it out on other people. So I'm so glad that you are helping individuals navigate through those situations. Now, long term, is it easy for someone to fall back into some type of communication or relationship with someone who has that personality type? Or do you find that once you are able to identify it, because I like to teach women how to navigate relationships before they let their hearts get involved in the dating process, make sure you're vetting this person, paying attention to the way they interact with other people or their family members, their friends, even the waiter or waitress at the restaurant. Pay attention because you're typically seeing the representative in the beginning. So when you talk about teaching people long term, what are some of the things that you guide them to do to make sure this does not happen again?
Totally. So it is very possible to, even if you've done the inner work for years, there is a chance that you can still kind of end up dealing with a narcissist in some sort of context. However, you're going to notice it so much faster than you otherwise would have, right? Especially without having the knowledge, without, the algorithm being as creepy as it is and finding the right people. Like it's a lot easier to recognize those early warning signs. But the main key to like really be able to absolutely prevent it throughout your life and being okay with, because narcissists are everywhere, let's face it, right? They're literally lurking absolutely everywhere, whether it's a family member, whether it's a friendship, a romantic partnership, a workplace, like a random person you bump into on the street. Like narcissists are everywhere, they are among us. And it's just so important to do your emotional work, right? Like once you start processing your emotions, because what's so important to understand with narcissists is they target your emotions, and that makes people easier to control. And so if you're a person who has empathy, which we are all, everyone watching this, you, Rhonda, myself, all of us, we all have empathy for other people, which is not a bad trait to have, right? The world totally needs more people with empathy. If more people had empathy, the world would probably be a nicer place, but hey, that's beyond my pay grade. But,
that's very true though, because I always felt the men I dated targeted me. And I felt I was targeted at first, and I'm not trying to sound conceited. At first, I thought it was because of my looks. Maybe they're approaching me for that. but it's really because you have to find yourself putting up boundaries. You can't just say, "Oh, I am a friendly person," because people take that the wrong way. Then they see you're compassionate, and then they see you're generous, or all these good qualities that make us decent human beings. Someone else who thinks opposite of us, they are only there to take advantage of that. So that is definitely a key point. And I there's been comments scrolling through, and I've been trying to read some of them, but this one says that her whole life she was not able to speak about it, and there was so much anxiety in her body. And that's what we talked about earlier, how the body does keep the score and can cause such ailments, and we don't want anybody to go through life in pain or unhappy. And that was one of the reasons I was like, I've got to talk to you, because so many people suffer from chronic pain that can be connected to trauma that they've gone through. So yeah, thank you guys for all the comments. I apologize, I'm not going to be able to read them all, but it's just amazing. I'm overwhelmed. When you look at statistics, because when it comes to domestic violence, 1 in 3 women in the world, well, 1 in 3 will experience domestic violence. In the United States, every minute, 20 people are physically abused. So those statistics are staggering. And usually people don't pay attention till something happens and it's in the news with a celebrity, and you see videos of what goes on behind closed doors. And people like us, we know because we've experienced whatever it was behind closed doors. So we know this happens. It's just that our stories wasn't broadcast on the internet. And so it's important to make sure you heal and understand. And like this person says, make those adjustments. Make those adjustments. That's a very true statement, because you have to make adjustments and you have to connect with people who are coaches like you or myself. Because if you keep going through life without addressing the problem, it's not going to just go away. It's not going to just go away. So thank you all for all the comments. And yeah, definitely. We have someone who actually said that they want to help people heal. And I think that's what you and I do. We help people heal. And so I encourage anyone, go through the programs that you need, especially this one, Bulletproof, so you can also, make sure you are healed, because you can't help someone else until you've helped yourself first. So I'm going to ask you a couple of final questions. And if anyone in the chat has a question you'd like me to ask before we end the live, please type it in and I'll try to get to it. Sometimes it scrolls fast, but I'm trying to read them as I go. And so um, before, and I've got, you see me looking away because I've got YouTube up as well. All right. So we've talked about identifying the narcissistic personality. We've talked about some of the things that you've had to overcome, which certainly qualify you for being the perfect coach to help someone who's going through this. Now, and you talked about your bulletproof program. So we definitely want people to get on the wait list, because I think it's an extraordinary program for them. And we had a comment. Okay. Talking about boundaries was that comment. So they're just making a comment about boundaries, not seeing a question yet. But in closing, what are some key points and key takeaways that you would like our listeners to remember?
Honestly, the inner work. Emotions are such an important part of the healing journey, but it's something that we don't want to look at, because the thing is, when you've been through narcissistic abuse, and especially if that was from a parent or any sort of childhood trauma, you are taught at a young age that you have to repress your emotions in order to survive, right? Because when you're a kid, like you were mentioning before, we look up to our parents. Like we literally view our parents as gods. And so if you have a parent that is abusive towards you and is shaming your emotions and, is making you walk on eggshells around their emotions, as a survival mechanism, you have to repress those emotions because the kid brain is like, oh, if I piss my mother off, she's going to get mad at me. And if she gets mad at me, she's not going to love me anymore. If she doesn't love me anymore, I'm going to die. So that's why those emotions feel so intense. They're like a life and death situation. And so part of healing is really just making it safe to feel your emotions and giving yourself that validation that the narcissist is never going to give you. And once you're really in touch with those emotions, like you absolutely can become bulletproof after narcissistic abuse. And you're going to be able to like spot manipulation from a mile away because you're going to know what that feels like in your nervous system. But without knowing what it feels like and without actually, getting curious about your emotions and kind of, telling your brain like, okay, like I know you feel threatened by this emotion, but like I'm not going to die from this. Let's process it. That's how you really create that safety within your brain and your nervous system to start processing and like truly healing. And it's not easy, but so worth it.
It isn't. I understand. And we have a good question here. Did either of you go to therapy and did it help? And what about therapy helped? Do you want to answer that first or should I go?
I mean, yeah, like I went and it didn't really help. I unfortunately had to figure it out on my own, and that's kind of why I'm a coach. What about you, Rhonda?
So I went to a couple of sessions. I mainly wanted to make sure my daughter, who was probably about 6 at the time and saw the abuse happen, it was not her father. It was my first fiance. But I went to therapy, made sure she went, and I went. And I remember sitting there, and the therapist's response to my trauma was, well, there's because one of the problems I had was I lost some memory. And she said to me, well, there's people on this end of the spectrum, then there's people on that end of the spectrum. You might be right in the middle. Your memory may come and go. And I was in my 20s. So I knew this was not normal, but I don't think people were trained at that time to talk about PTSD in the form of abuse when it happens because of domestic violence. And so I was discouraged and I did not go to therapy anymore. So, yes, I went, but there was nothing from therapy that helped me except for me to realize that I needed to seek someone who specifically dealt with domestic violence situations. And today there are professionals who are licensed counselors who do specifically deal with women who have been through domestic violence. So, for me, and I do encourage therapy, but I encourage therapy with the right person. You have to have someone that's qualified in that to help you, which is another reason I started my program. Even though I'm not a licensed counselor, I do more of the peer specialist work because, like I said, you want someone who you can trust, who's been there, who can help you. And my program is called SAIL, Survivors Advocate, Inspire, and Live After Abuse. So we have a 7-month program that we go through because it does take time. And I want to make sure that you know how to guide yourself and govern yourselves in the months and years afterwards and avoid that situation again. So, yeah, that's the long winded answer is that for me, therapy, because I chose the wrong counselor, did not really help.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's not even that you chose the wrong counselor either. Mm-hmm. It's like, because it's, so many people have this experience too. And there are great therapists out there. I am not shitting on therapy whatsoever. Like if you have that unicorn therapist who gets it, if you are that unicorn therapist who gets it, amazing. Like I am super happy that that is in place. But a lot of the times it's like you get who you get, right? Or it's like, oh, like this one's close to me, so it's going to be easy to get there. And like you think that therapy is like the thing you have to do, and when you go, you don't get the help that you're looking for. It's like, oh my gosh, like what the hell, right? And so a lot of the times I saw someone mention that coaching and therapy combo can be super helpful, and I totally encourage that. A lot of people who do my coaching program, because I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach, they do therapy at the same time, and it's like magical for them. Some people do better with therapy, some people do better with coaching, some people do better with both. So it's really up to what is right for you, and sometimes it's trial and error, which can get kind of expensive and time consuming. But once you find like the right fit, whether it's a coach or a therapist or both, it's, you can really get well on your way on your healing journey.
Absolutely. I'm going to take one last question from the comments. So this person is saying that inner work is exhausting, and which can be true.
Yes.
So how do I keep some joy in my life? Now, I'm going to answer because, and you can give me your answer as well, but in my workbook sale, we actually have activities. And so there are activities that every participant needs to do, and that helps with some joy. You know, it may be volunteering, but also it's writing out and connecting with your emotions and finding out what truly made you feel this way. Because sometimes we are triggered, but we don't know why. Like for the women who go through my course because they were with partners who abuse them, I tell them in the beginning, get rid of gifts that remind you of that person. So if my ex gave me a watch, I got to get rid of that because every time I look at the time, I don't want to recall a memory with him. I don't want those connections. And it may seem trivial, but subconsciously we do. Even people who live together, I'm like, okay, just rearrange your furniture, change the bed sheets, change the color scheme, all that, because we don't want it to remind you of your past. So there's little things you can do every day, and I know that you probably teach those things as well. So how do you advise people to keep some joy in their life as they go through recovery?
Totally. And I couldn't agree with you more. Like, get rid of the gifts. Like,
Yeah.
it's so crucial. Because, like,
Yeah.
no, you don't need that. You don't need the bad energy under that gift, too,
Right.
if we want to get a little out there. But, yes, inner work is exhausting. And sometimes, like, I find, like, what really helped me and what helps a lot of my clients when, the inner work gets exhausting is just acknowledging like this sucks so much, because there's so much freedom in letting it suck. Because once you actually allow it to suck, it's like, oh, okay, that actually felt good. Like you actually start feeling better. So it's like whatever, like right here, right now, like what emotion are you feeling? Let yourself feel it, because part of it is like judging yourself for even feeling the emotion. And like, the inner critic will say like, oh, like I need to be healed by this point. I need to feel better by this point. Why is it taking me so long? And you start judging yourself, and you're judging yourself that like you're not happy yet and all that kind of stuff. And that could literally be a journal prompt. Yes. And I push journaling so much in my programs, and just anytime I talk about this, like journal about it, it's gonna be so good. And like when you get honest with yourself, because like you couldn't be honest with the narcissist, you had to tiptoe around the truth. And so when you're journaling, and I will share this free journaling exercise, pen, paper, 20-minute timer, vomit all of the thoughts onto the paper, and destroy it after 20 minutes is up. And that can be so cathartic. Like whether it's you judging yourself for like not feeling good by now, whether it's, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Whatever your inner critic is saying to you, that in itself, just acknowledging it and just accepting like, okay, this is just how I feel right now. This is exhausting. This sucks. That can actually shift your perception and take the power, and it can take the power away from the emotion, so you can actually make space for that joy.
And I'm so glad you told them to throw it away, because that physically, that act, it's like you're getting rid of it. You're physically getting rid of it. You're emotionally getting rid of it. Some people will write things down and then go back and reread it. No.
No. And like ripping it up after it's basically you're telling your subconscious like, this no longer serves me. Like I don't need this crap anymore. And something that actually came up with one of my clients today, and it comes up with my clients all the time, is I want to remember certain insights that I have. And that's great. Like I totally understand that. Get a separate notebook for that. Jot down in point form, like, your progress or like those key points that you don't want to forget, and still throw the actual journaling that you're doing away, because then that's going to, really signal to your subconscious that like, you don't need this.
Yeah. And that's also for the women who say, well, I have a child with my ex. And I let them know what you want to do is create a time capsule for your child. That way you can put memories or pictures of the child with your ex in this time capsule. You don't have to have that picture sitting on your desk or on your wall in your home because it brings triggers to you. But you can create a time capsule so the child knows, listen, although mommy and daddy did not remain together, we created you and you were created out of love. So that way, you don't necessarily destroy everything. You do have something that you can provide your child because they want memories with both parents. And that's the way you would, if you're in a situation where your ex is abusive or was the narcissistic person you need to get away with, you don't have to take those memories away from your child. So that's how we deal with that for survivors.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Okay, well, I'm going to let you give us any closing thoughts and be sure to tell everyone where they can find you.
Totally. So closing thoughts, I know how hard it is. It will 100% get better. Maybe not overnight, but taking one baby step today can absolutely, become a staircase. Just pull that out of my brain. That can become the staircase of your healing journey. I also have like a free quiz at the link in my bio as well if you are interested, and it will kind of, give you in your results like what your next step on your healing journey can be. So if that is helpful for anyone, go for it. And you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, or Facebook under Let's Get Your Shift Together. That is shift with an F, and it's all one word. And yeah.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And I know I said we're ending. I just want to address this person because I don't ever want anybody to feel overlooked. Will I stop crying every day? Yes. And if you are at the point where you're crying excessively, maybe it may be depression, get professional medical help. But as well, make sure you take that quiz that she just mentioned so that you can find out more about what's going on. So definitely use the resources that have been provided to you today. Let's get your shift together. I love that play on words, by the way. And I am Rhonda Green, and I am the founder of SAIL, Survivors Advocate, Inspire, and Live After Abuse. I just want to make sure we had an opportunity to speak with Ms. Bucci about her program because I know that sometimes people are going through domestic violence and trying to get out of that situation and fully recover. They don't understand the personalities they dealt with. They figure, it was them, but it's not. And once you begin to understand more about what happened, you can truly recover, dig deep, and heal, and prevent yourself from being in situations like that in the future. I thank everyone who joined us on the live. Be sure to catch the replay, share it with someone who may need to, and make sure that you get on the wait list for Bulletproof. And if not, the other program name was
Freedom.
Freedom. How can I forget that? We want you to be totally free, you guys. I don't like to say life is short because I believe words are so powerful. We're going to all live long, healthy lives. And as you live your long, healthy, best life, I want you to be happy. And the key to being happy is making sure that you deal with the things in your past that have caused you trauma. So, with that said, we're going to end the live. Thank you again for joining me. Thank you guys for watching. And I appreciate everyone being here. So, you all take care and know that you are loved. You deserve the best life on this earth. Have a wonderful day and sail to new heights the rest of this week.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Take care. Bye. Bye. And for those of you on YouTube, thank you. I hope that you were able to hear both parts of the conversations. But if not, just go over to IG survivors_SAIL and you can catch the whole replay. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye.